real estate. Smart investing.
Hello and welcome to Smart Investing. I'm Chris Gray. On tonight's show, what are the top 10 growth suburbs in Australia? Who are the best performing agents in the country? And if you're buying and selling at the same time in this market, should you buy first or sell first? Well, joining us tonight is Derek Taylor, New South Wales Sales Manager at realestate.com.au, and News Corp real estate expert Tom Panos. Good to see you guys as usual.
Evening, Chris. Good evening.
Now, we always like to start off. You've got so much traffic to your website, so what's everyone talking about on realestate.com?
Yeah, one of our most popular articles at the moment is around the top Australian suburbs for price growth over the last 12 months, and this has really grabbed a lot of attention because obviously everyone's interested in how their property has performed, and especially now that the market's a little bit more subdued. And there were some really interesting findings. You know, if we have a look across the top 10 nationally, I think 8 of the top 10 were taken out by New South Wales, which is understandably given the last couple of years in terms of price growth. But coming in at number 3 was Arcadia with an increase of around $650,000. Followed by Bronte, the beachside suburb of Bronte at number 2 with an increase of about $850,000. But the big mover was Tamarama in New South Wales, which is just near Bronte, which had an increase of a bit over $1 million. So if you're, you could basically now retire in that area and just enjoy the capital growth on your property.
I bought my second property in Tamarama when I came to Australia, I think in about '99. So very happy to see that. Tom, any surprises in there for you?
You're an absolute genius. You were able to read the market. That was 20... Did you say 99?
Yeah, so I came in 97, bought in Coogee in 99, and I think Tamarama maybe 2001.
What a forecaster. I mean, what you would be...
I just followed the rich Poms, Tom, that wanted to stay by the beach.
Okay, so there's pluses and minuses in that, isn't it? You've got to live with them, but you're going to make a lot of money there.
Exactly.
So 20 years ago, you actually went in invested in that area. Looking at that, no, it's not a surprise because, to be honest with you, we know that water and land near water is scarce commodity and it will always do good. Demand and supply rules all real estate, so it doesn't surprise me. You probably would have paid good money back then anyway.
420, which at the time was a fortune.
Wow.
Yeah, well, 420 still buys you something in, you know, out of Sydney or out of Melbourne or something in Adelaide, but it's always the case. You pay a little bit more, which you would have at that time. 420 was way over the median average of Sydney prices.
And it's now probably around 6 million, 6.2 million?
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's gone up by, what was it, $1 million. So congratulations, mate, and that's why you're driving the car you're driving and I'm taking an Uber home.
I'll give you a lift any time. But, I mean, that's the thing is because so many people say all the time, our property's so expensive, but they forget about what it was at the time. And I always say, if you could buy your parents' property for your parents' price or your grandparents for their price, you'd buy 100 of them, wouldn't you?
Yes.
But at the time, they thought it was all too expensive. Now, also they had the REB Top 100 agents as well. I mean, I know we get a lot of agents following us because of Tom Panos over there. So who are the top ones? Yeah,
look, we're delighted to be involved in this year's Top 100 agents nationally. And, you know, there's an interesting criteria put out by REB, and it looks at the total of sales for a particular agent over a 12-month period, the total dollar value for those sales and the average price. And coming in terms of the top 10, if we have a look at the top 3, I think we've got James Tostovan from Victoria, from Marshall White out there near Hawthorn, came in at number 3, followed by Michael Clark, New South Wales, in the Northern Beaches there at Manly at number 2. And Alexander Phillips took out the coveted number 1 spot. And what was really interesting, it was, I think, the 3rd year in a row that Alexander Phillips actually took out the number 1 spot nationally in the top 100 for REB.
And look, Philip Spencer Donnelly, amazing outfit. I mean, they're really taking over the eastern suburbs in Sydney, but they're just machines. And I think I saw an interview with Alex Phillips and you maybe about a week ago on your emails, something like 1,000 phone calls that he makes a week.
Yeah, so, like, he extraordinary worker, as they all are. I think what you must look at with these agents that apply for these awards, they are applied awards. So you go in, you fill in an application, you submit it in there. That's the first thing. So you are self-nominated. The second thing is that what you notice about these real estate agents is that they do run business units. And that's the big change. So what you actually see is a real estate agent that's normally got, you know, some agents that work underneath them. So a lot of the times when you look at the amount of calls, I think they're actually spread between their business unit. That's what real estate's changed now. We've got to be very clear. What people are running are effective business units, that they've got sub-agents that work underneath them, buyers agents, they've got admin support staff. So we're talking about great operations, but I mean, the fact that he's won it 3 years in a row, that shows that he's a great agent and a great leader in his business unit. James Tostovan has been there. I think James Tostovan would have been a great agent now. I think it's 2 decades in a row. He's one of the few people I can say 20 years in a row. He's in there year in, year out. Michael Clark, he's not the cricketer, same name, but he's got a very good batting average.
Well, I think the average tenure for most of those agents is sort of 20, 25 years in the industry, so a lot of experience.
Yeah. Because when you crack it, because I know we talked a few weeks ago that a lot of agents don't earn all that big money and they don't stay in the industry, but once you've cracked it and you've got the formula. Now, Tom, I know you would have trained a lot of these guys, and you're probably promoting them to say that you need to get onto these kind of REB awards and things like that. So how many would you have trained in like the top 100?
The REB top 100, them have generally all of them. I mean, this might be a very broad-based statement. I would say that most to all of them, their office or themselves, have gone through the real estate gym system. Why is that the case? Very simple. To succeed in real estate, all you've got to do is time travel. Find someone that's doing good stuff. Say to yourself, I want to be like them in 2 years, and then all you do is copy them. So I've always had a model: find other people that are getting the results, then find an area that they're doing similar to, because you don't want to, you know, if you're in Emu Plains, or if you're in Campbelltown, or if you're in a suburb that's got an average price of 400 versus a suburb that's got, say, 4 million, you want to compare yourself to someone that's got, you know, similar sort of price bracket demographic, and copy what they're doing, and you will be successful. And pretty much my real estate gym model has always been find other people that are getting the results, and then what I do is I unpack their system and I actually make it available to an average real estate agent to say, hey, this is what they do, this is how they do it, this is their template. And I'm really proud to know that, you know, I've got real estate agents that are writing $1 million in fees that have got average price brackets of $400,000. To me, it's not whether you're able, it's whether you're willing.
They got the formula, haven't they?
Correct.
And I think the only problem with your model, Tom, is it's too cheap, and you should be charging them a percentage of their increase in how much you make them, well, because then you wouldn't even be here.
Well, absolutely. The reason I'm here on a Monday night is that I charge $620 a year to give people the template. And if I was intelligent enough and I was charging $6,200, chances are I'd be sitting in Mykonos right now watching the show, not on the show.
Now, Derek, obviously you guys can tell straight away which properties are selling on your realestate.com.au. Picking an agent is part of it. What is the rest of, I guess, the plan to sell your property for the right price?
Yeah, I think picking an agent is an important part, and I think anyone who's looking for an agent at the moment, you know, my advice would be make sure you do plenty of research. That's, I think, the key, and you can simply go onto realestate.com.au, have a look at the agent profile for any agent in your area, and basically their career CV in terms of their industry, their length of tenure, industry experience, industry awards, community involvement, and it's a good introduction in terms of those particular agents. Once you've decided on a short list, we've got a great tool called Agent Compare, where you can actually compare all the agents side by side and look at a little bit more detailed data in terms of who's selling what types of property that is specific to your needs. So it might be a 4-bedroom home in a specific suburb. It looks at days on market and average yield. So that way you can make an informed decision. And I think anyone looking to select an agent, try before you buy. You know, go to an open for inspection or an auction and just see how they interact with customers and yourself, and what sort of marketing campaign they've got, because that's critical in a market that's less and less buyers, that you need to ensure you've got a very strong marketing campaign.
Yeah, and as they always say, anyone can sell a property for, I guess, the rough price, but if you want a premium, then you've already got to pick the best agents. Now, Charles isn't joining us this evening, unfortunately. I think he's presenting at an office or a seminar. You're going to take us through the auction clearance numbers, so we'll start off with the first graph.
Okay, so well, the first one's auction clearance rates, and it's come up on there. And you know, overall, there's been a 10% reduction in clearance rates over the last year, with every capital city performing lower than this time last year. So that's pretty much the state of affairs. You're basically seeing a reduction of 10%, so the numbers are definitely lower. but what we are noticing is there is properties that are being sold after the event. When you're going through, I mean, places like Sydney, you know, last year was 68%, right? This week, you know, it's 56%. So, this, you know, the areas that you're looking at that have done, you know, reasonably okay is Melbourne, but on average, a 10% reduction.
Right, okay. And then moving on to homes advertised for sale.
So the number of properties that have been advertised, as it comes up there on the screen, this week are lower than the same time last year, with Sydney having 25% less for auction. The best performer of the week was Canberra with a 65%, beating Sydney with 56% and Melbourne at 60%. Adelaide and Canberra have had the most consistent run over the past few weeks.
Wonderful. And moving on to rent price movements.
So I think the one that's coming up is homes advertised for sales, or is it rent price movements?
Yeah,
rent price movements, okay. Down again this week over last week by 0.92%. A good comparison to look at is today's numbers and compare them to January 2015 across some of the capital cities. Best performers, Hobart, 23%. Love Hobart. Sydney at 4%. And worst performers, Darwin and Perth.
And then just finally the vacancy rates.
So the vacancy rate, that's come up there, beautiful. Melbourne continues to outperform all other capital cities, with the vacancy rates being under 1% for a very long time. Sydney vacancy rate was 2.75%. So Perth has increased this week. The average over the past three capital cities was 4.19%, which is high over the same time last week.
Wonderful. Thanks for those updates, Tom. Now, Derek, before we move into the break, obviously a lot of the time we're talking about sales agents and how to pick one of those. Do the same rules apply for property managers? Because obviously that's a really important part of your property investment journey as well.
Yeah, very much so. You can look on realestate.com.au in terms of a property manager's profile. I think my tip would be, again, make sure you do your research and maybe have a bit of a think in terms of, well, what's your key objectives in terms of your investment property? Are you looking for capital growth or high rental yield? And that will help you in terms of the conversations that you have in terms of selecting the right property manager. And again, try before you buy. Go to an open for inspection and see how they interact, and perhaps you might get that emotional connection straight away, and simply have a chat with them.
And that's the thing, is there's always pretending you're the opposite person. So if you're going to rent the property through them, pretend you're a tenant and maybe a buyer rather than the seller.
Exactly right.
Now, if we've got some of the agents out there, either the sales agents or the property managers, what can they learn from some of these awards?
Yeah, well, they definitely set a benchmark for people to aspire to in terms of making the top 100. And as Tom mentioned earlier, what you tend to see, they've got incredible work ethic. They're very systems and process driven, so they know what they're doing from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. They've got a thirst for knowledge. They're always looking for what's new, what's changing in terms of technology or consumer behaviour. They're very customer-centric, and I think that's at the heart of everything they do. And they invest quite substantially in terms of their team. So they understand as leaders, a great leader is having a great team. So they invest quite a lot in terms of the teams that they have that work with them.
Now, Tom, can you still make 1,000 calls a week and still have a family and a social life?
I'm not the best person to be talking about life balance. I actually think that most real estate agents are workaholics. That's my, honest assessment of 30 years in this business. But I think they're engaged workaholics. I don't say a workaholic in a negative way. They're the sort of person, I mean, to me, agents are either work-life segmenters, which they separate their two lives, or they're work-life integrators. Most great real estate agents are work-life integrators. They've got a mobile phone while they're putting a nappy on, right? That's the way that they operate. They've got a mobile phone while they're walking through the shop, putting stuff in the shopping trolley. They've learnt a formula of doing both.
It's like you doing your Sunday rant last night, and your daughter was involved in the conversation, setting up the camera at the same time.
Absolutely.
Bit of father and daughter time.
Absolutely.
Sounds good, Tom. Now, we're going to take a short break, but we'll be back soon.
You're watching Sky News Real Estate. Smart investing. Sky News Real Estate. Smart investing.
Welcome back to Smart Investing. Well, joining me on the show tonight is Derek Taylor, New South Wales Sales Manager at realestate.com.au, and News Corp real estate expert Tom Panos. Now, ANZ has reported property prices will drop by 10% in Sydney and Melbourne. So, do we think this is accurate? Now, we always say on the show you should never believe the media, apart from this show, of course. What are your thoughts, Derek?
Yeah, well, look, as I mentioned last time on the show, look, the market is more subdued, in particular in Sydney, not so much in Melbourne, but it still is subdued down there as well. I think 10%, you know, it could be pretty close to the mark. We're already seeing prices come down about 4% in New South Wales over the last 12 months. You know, I think over the next 12 months we're going to see continued softening, but we're not going to fall off the end of a cliff. I think, you know, the economy is going along quite well, you know, interest rates are at an all-time low, although there is some of that increasing, still only marginally. I think there'll be small decline, but it'll start to pick up after the next 12 months. And it depends on what areas you're looking in. We're still seeing very strong buyer demand in terms of housing in the northern beaches and eastern suburbs, and in terms of the apartments, we're seeing strong buyer demand in lower North Shore and inner west. So I think it depends on areas. It's a mixed bag at the moment.
And Tom, you'd see that from being an auctioneer. There's some properties that potentially go up in value, and there's some that go down, and the average could be -5 or 10%.
Yeah. Development sites, there's no buyers rocking up to those. Beautiful homes in great spots that a family's going to go live there for 20 years, they don't really care what's happening now. They're buying to live in a property for 20 years. And they've probably sold their house, and even if they haven't sold it, they're going to sell it at a figure that might be lower than what they would have hoped. But guess what? They're buying one at a cheaper price, so life moves on. So I think that Derek is pretty accurate in using a rough gauge figure of 10%, but some properties have gone down 50%, development sites. Some properties have actually not gone down, and some properties have actually gone up a little bit.
Now, Derek, for you guys, I assume that summer and spring are obviously a great time to be selling property. Yep. We're kind of in the middle of winter. It's pretty cold these days. Does that mean it's completely dead, or is it a good time to be buying or selling? Good
question. Look, it is colder. It's not as appealing to go to an open for inspection. The gardens don't look as spectacular as they do in the spring and summer months, and many of the agents go away and use this as their sort of mid-season break. But, you know, I've often heard Tom talk about this, that winter is still a good time to sell because there's less competition. You know, there's still buyer demand there. So, you know, my advice will be, I think if you're ready to sell, if you've worked with your agent, it's priced accordingly to what's happening in the marketplace at the moment, and you've got a very strong marketing campaign. Why not? Now's a great time because you're less competition out there for you.
And if you're in one of these areas where there isn't that much demand,
yep,
what are some of the things, because obviously you're in the inside, you can see from your systems what goes on. What can people do?
Yeah, I think apart from making the property more appealing, I think it's really important to make sure in terms of your marketing campaign that you're casting the net as far and wide as possible, because you want to attract as many buyers as you can to get the best possible price. And I think what we're seeing is some of the top agents, they not only do they have a very strong marketing campaign on realestate.com.au in terms of a premier campaign, so they're appearing at the top of the search, they're also going hunting for buyers, and whether they be active and passive, and they're trying to maximise their audience through using tools such as Audience Maximizer, which is an internet and social media retargeting campaign. So, you know, it's not just enough to have people will come to you. You've got to go looking for those buyers. And just to put it in perspective, the average person spends about 55 minutes a month on realestate.com.au, which is pretty good, eh? But in terms of on the internet, they're spending 60+ hours on the internet, whether that be on the internet or social media. So imagine the power of being able to follow both passive and active buyers from realestate.com.au as they go on their journey across the internet, and your property appears in front of them. That's pretty powerful. So my recommendation would be, if you're selling at the moment, speak to your agent tomorrow about Audience Maximizer in terms of that social media and internet retargeting.
And so for those viewers that don't understand retargeting, they're not into the social media thing, effectively it's like those adverts that suddenly appear, but suddenly you keep seeing the same house or the same car.
Exactly right. Look, I'm sure everyone's searched for a holiday on Google, and then all of a sudden following them around the internet and on social media is accommodation in Fiji, or they've looked for a handbag or a new set of golf clubs. Very similar, but using the data that's collected via realestate.com.au in terms of people that are actually interested in similar properties to what you have, similar price bracket, and in a similar location, that's incredibly powerful.
No, I get that with Tom Panos on the time. He appears everywhere. Now, Tom, we've talked about some properties are selling, some aren't. So if you're looking at moving, should you buy first or sell first?
Okay. It's a good question, because if you bought first and you thought your house was worth a lot more money, and you bought that house based on what you thought you'd sell for, and then you can't sell your house, your mathematics is wrong, so you're stuck. On the other hand, if you actually sell first and you then are looking for a special home that's not on the market, you may have to actually rent for a short period of time or move in with family and friends. So what I say to consumers is, in the ideal scenario, buy well and buy a home with a long settlement. So say to the people, hey, we want to buy this home, but we don't want to settle in 12 weeks or 16 weeks. And then you've got time to sell your house without having the pressure of actually having a property sold within like 4 weeks. So that's the ideal scenario. I think you've got to also take into account, speak to a bank and say, hey, what happens if we buy and we haven't sold? Just tell us what are the products that we've got to look after us short term if we don't have an instantaneous settlement. But the most important thing, Chris and Derek, is that you've got to understand, if you're someone that is selling and buying in the same market, you've got to look at the book. It's got 2 chapters, what I sell at and what I buy at. And I think if you're an upgrader, you're better off upgrading in this market because the home that you're going to actually buy is probably come down more than the one you're going to sell. Yeah.
Some genius ideas as always, Tom. Thanks for joining us. Derek, thanks for having me on the show as well.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us at home as well. Until next week, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.
Information presented on Sky News Real Estate is general in nature. Viewers should seek their own professional advice before purchasing products or services. Sky News Real Estate may receive a fee for commercial arrangements with companies featured in this programming.